Ever been in a situation where decisions had to happen, like right now,
Right.
and the wrong call could have, well, pretty serious consequences?
Oh, absolutely.
It makes you wonder, doesn't it, what kind of leadership is really effective when the stakes are just sky high and everything's going sideways?
Exactly. And that's precisely what we're diving into today.
Okay.
This deep dive is all about leadership in what researchers call extreme contexts.
Extreme context. Sounds intense.
It is. And to help us get a handle on it, we've looked at some really interesting research, specifically an article from the Journal of Leadership and Organizational Studies. It's titled Leadership in Extreme Contexts: Transformational Leadership, Performance Beyond Expectations.
Hmm.
So our goal here is really to unpack what this research tells us about leading effectively when things get incredibly demanding.
And we're talking about really demanding jobs, right?
Yeah.
This study focuses on firefighters.
That's right. We're looking specifically at how leadership impacts performance in firefighting, especially when they're dealing with what they call working fires.
Okay, what's a working fire?
That's when you've got visible fire in a structure. It needs at least one hose line. Basically, all the first responders are engaged, and they need backup beyond the initial team. It's the real deal.
Got it. High stakes.
Definitely. So we want to understand what this research reveals, about how leaders actually behave and what drives performance when facing that kind of extreme danger.
Right.
But, and this is important, even if you're not out there battling blazes, the insights here, they're about how people respond under pressure, what kind of leadership cuts through the chaos. Well, that can be surprisingly relevant in lots of other fields, maybe even in our own lives.
Okay, so let's start with the basics then. What actually makes a context extreme? Well, it's got to be more than just, a tough Monday morning.
Oh, much more. Leadership research sometimes overlooks context or treats it as kind of static, but extreme contexts, as Hannah and colleagues define them, have some very specific characteristics, 5 key dimensions, actually.
Yeah, let's break those down. What are they?
Right. First, there's location and time. These things often happen in unpredictable places under really intense time pressure.
Makes sense.
Second, the magnitude of potential consequences. We're talking serious risks, physical, psychological, material damage. It's all on the line.
Okay.
Third is the probability of those bad things actually happening. In extreme contexts, that probability is often, well, uncomfortably high.
Right. Not just a possibility, but likely.
Exactly. Fourth is the physical or psychosocial proximity to danger. How close are the people involved to the actual threat?
Okay. And the last one?
And finally, the form of threat itself. Is it something clear and known, or is it ambiguous, maybe changing rapidly?
Wow. Okay. When you list them
Yes.
like that, yeah, a working fire absolutely fits the bill.
Mm-hmm.
Unpredictable place, huge potential harm, high chance of it happening, firefighters right in it, and a danger that's constantly evolving.
Precisely. It ticks all the boxes. So the researchers needed a way to analyze the leadership styles they observed. They used a framework called the Full Range of Leadership Model, or FRL.
FRL. Okay, what's the main idea behind that model? Does it cover different kinds of leadership?
It does. Think of it as a spectrum. At one end, you have transformational leadership.
Ah, I think I've heard of that one. That's the inspiring visionary stuff.
Exactly. Leaders who are role models, they motivate you, get you to think differently, care about you individually. They often talk about the 4 Is: idealized influence, inspirational motivation, intellectual stimulation, and individualized consideration.
Right. Often seen as the sort of gold standard in normal situations.
Often, yes, especially in more stable environments. Then, moving along, you get transactional leadership.
Transactional. So more about exchanges.
Pretty much. It's focused on clear expectations and rewards or consequences. You do this, you get this reward that's called contingent reward.
Okay.
And it also includes management by exception. That's where leaders step in when something goes wrong. They might be actively looking for deviations that's active, or they might only react after a mistake happens that's passive.
All right. Transformational, transactional.
Yeah.
What's at the other end of the spectrum?
That would be passive avoidant leadership, sometimes just called laissez-faire,
Letting things be.
or really avoiding leadership altogether, avoiding decisions, not taking responsibility, just not being there as a leader.
Right. Not ideal.
Definitely not. Now, for this study, they simplified things a bit. They grouped these into 3 main factors. Transformational, which combined all those 4 Is.
Got it.
Then transactional, combining contingent reward and the active form of management by exception.
Okay.
And finally, passive avoidant, which lumped together the passive management by exception and that laissez-faire style.
Okay, that makes sense. So we got these three broad styles. Now, before this study, was there agreement on which style would be best when things get really dangerous, like in a fire?
Not really. That's one of the reasons this research is interesting. The existing literature was actually, well, kind of conflicted on leadership in these extreme situations.
Oh, so.
Well, some research, maybe from military contexts, suggested that really high-stress life and death situations could actually forge stronger bonds, maybe even more transformational relationships between leaders and teams.
Huh. Like going through intense stuff together
Yeah.
builds that connection.
That was the idea. Shared adversity building trust, shared purpose, things you associate with transformational leadership.
Okay. But there was another view.
Yes. Others argued that when safety is the absolute #1 priority, you actually need something different. Maybe a more directive approach focused on preventing errors. That sounds more like active management by exception, which is part of the transactional style.
Right. So direct instructions, watching closely for mistakes because mistakes could be catastrophic.
Precisely. So there was this uncertainty. Do extreme contexts call for more inspiration or more direct management? The study tried to get at that by looking at the same fire officers in two different settings, their normal routine at the station, and then during these intense working fires.
Ah, comparing the same leader in different contexts. Smart.
Yeah. So what did they actually find? When the sirens are blaring and the fire's visible, what kind of leadership seemed to correlate with better firefighter performance?
Okay, let's get to the findings. This is the crucial part. What leadership style really mattered when the pressure was on during those working fires?
Well, the results were pretty clear, and maybe a bit surprising for some. The strongest predictor of firefighter performance during those extreme events, the working fires, was transactional contingent reward leadership.
Transactional contingent reward. So if you do this specific thing well, you'll be recognized for it part.
Exactly that. Clearly setting out what needed to be done in that chaotic situation and then providing that positive reinforcement or reward when firefighters met those expectations, that seemed to be the key driver of performance.
Wow. Okay, that is interesting. So it wasn't the big inspiring vision of transformational leadership that made the most difference in that moment.
In the final analysis, no. Transformational leadership didn't show a significant direct relationship with performance in those extreme fire situations. Now, it did explain some of the variance earlier on in their analysis, but the transactional piece was stronger in the end.
And the passive avoidance style. Any surprises there?
No surprises there. As you'd probably guess, passive avoidant leadership had a negative impact on performance, which makes total sense, right?
Absolutely. You can't really afford a leader who checks out when lives are on the line. Okay, so that's performance. What about the leaders themselves? Did they change their behavior between the fire station routine and the fire ground?
Yes, and this is another really critical finding. The study found that the fire officers were actually perceived by their teams as showing less transformational leadership behavior during the working fires compared to their normal day-to-day leadership back at the station.
So less of the inspirational talks, less individualized coaching when they were actually fighting the fire.
That's what the data suggests. They seem to dial back on those transformational elements.
Okay, but what about the other styles? Did they become more transactional or more passive during the fire?
Interestingly, no. The study found no significant difference in the reported levels of transactional or passive avoidant leadership between the normal context and the extreme context.
Huh. So it wasn't that they ramped up the transactional stuff, but they specifically pulled back on the transformational.
That seems to be the pattern. The relative emphasis shifted because the transformational behaviors decreased during the extreme event.
Okay, let's dig into that a bit. Why would that be? Why might transactional leadership, especially that contingent reward piece, be so effective right then, while transformational leadership kind of takes a back seat? What's going on?
Well, the researchers suggest a few possible explanations. First, think about the situation itself. A working fire involves intense time pressure. You need rapid adjustments, quick decisions, and just unambiguous action.
No time for a lengthy motivational speech.
Probably not. In that kind of environment, clear, concise instructions, do this now, and immediate feedback on whether it was done correctly, that's crucial. And that's really the core of transactional leadership, especially contingent reward. It cuts through the noise.
Right. It provides immediate clarity when clarity is essential for safety and just getting the job done.
Exactly. And that links to another idea they mentioned, sense-making. In these incredibly dangerous, confusing environments, firefighters need to make sense of what's happening very quickly. They need to understand their role, what's expected to stay safe and be effective.
And clear instructions help with that sense-making.
Precisely. The clear directions and the monitoring that come with transactional leadership can be vital in reducing that ambiguity, helping everyone understand the immediate priorities and stay aligned.
So it sounds like maybe transformational leadership is more about building the foundation, building trust, team cohesion, that shared sense of purpose before the crisis hits.
That's a very likely dynamic. Transformational leadership might be crucial in normal times for building that underlying efficacy and trust. But when the alarm goes off, the immediate life or death demands of the situation seem to prioritize those more directive, task-focused behaviors, making sure the critical tasks get done correctly right now.
Which aligns more with that transactional contingent reward style.
Exactly. It's about ensuring immediate task completion and safety in a high-risk, fast-moving scenario.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So thinking bigger picture now,
Yeah.
what are the implications here, both for how we understand leadership theory, maybe, and for practical things like training leaders in these high-risk jobs?
Well, theoretically, this study is important because it shines a light on these extreme contexts, which, as we said, are often overlooked in leadership research.
Okay.
It strongly supports the idea that leadership isn't a one-size-fits-all kind of thing. Effective leadership needs to be adaptive. Different situations really do call for different approaches. It adds real weight to that debate about what works best under high risk.
So it pushes back against the idea that transformational is always the best.
It suggests that, at least in these specific extreme moments, transactional contingent reward might be more directly impactful on immediate performance.
Okay. And what about the practical side, for training fire officers or police chiefs or ER supervisors?
Practically, the findings suggest that leadership development programs for these professions should probably include specific training on how to effectively use transactional contingent reward behaviors during extreme events.
So teaching them how to set crystal clear expectations under pressure, how to give that immediate reinforcing feedback.
Exactly. How to recognize good performance even when everything is chaotic. And of course, it hammers home the point that passive, avoidant leadership is detrimental and needs to be actively discouraged or trained out.
Makes sense. Now, no study is perfect. Were there limitations or caveats the researchers mentioned? Things I should keep in mind.
Yeah, absolutely. They were clear about the limitations. It's a correlational study, non-experimental. That means while they found a strong link between transactional contingent reward and performance, they can't definitively prove causation. There could be other factors involved.
Okay. Correlation isn't causation.
Right. Also, it relied on surveys where firefighters recalled past events. Memory can be tricky, right?
Sure.
They tried to minimize that by focusing on a common type of event, the working fire, and even used some visual priming techniques, but recall bias is always a possibility in retrospective studies.
Gotcha. And they used the FRL model. Did they suggest maybe looking at other leadership ideas too?
They did. They acknowledged that the FRL model is just one lens, and other leadership behaviors might be really important in extreme situations too.
Like what?
Well, they suggested future research could explore things like shared leadership. Maybe leadership isn't always top-down in these events. Or maybe look more closely at purely directive leadership styles. And they also mentioned the need to test these ideas in other extreme contexts. Does this hold true for police officers in a shootout? Or ER teams during a mass casualty event?
Yeah, seeing if it generalizes.
Right. And another fascinating area they pointed to was exploring that link between leadership in normal times and performance later. Does building that transformational foundation, the trust, the efficacy, does that somehow give leaders credit they can draw on, which indirectly helps performance when things get extreme?
Like building up goodwill or trust that pays off later.
Exactly. The idea of idiosyncrasy credits, as some researchers call it. And finally, digging deeper into what kind of rewards actually work best in that transactional approach during a crisis. Is it just verbal praise, a nod, clear acknowledgement? What resonates most under pressure?
Lots more to explore there.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's try and wrap this up. For everyone listening, what's the main takeaway? What's the core message from this deep dive into leadership when things get extreme?
I think the key insight really is that in those moments of intense danger and rapid change, like a working fire, leadership that focuses on clear expectations and acknowledges when those expectations are met, that transactional contingent reward style seems to be critically important for driving performance.
More so, perhaps, than the purely inspirational style in that immediate crisis moment.
It appears so for direct impact on task performance right then. But, and this is a crucial but, we shouldn't discount transformational leadership. It likely plays that vital role in building the strong, trusting, motivated teams before the crisis hits. It builds the foundation.
So it's not an either-or, but maybe a both hand, applied differently depending on the context.
That seems like a very reasonable interpretation. You need that foundation of trust and shared purpose, maybe built through transformational leadership in calmer times. But you also need the ability to provide clear, transactional direction when the situation demands it.
And like we said earlier, these lessons aren't just for firefighters. Understanding how leadership shifts under pressure,
Hmm.
that's relevant for anyone facing high-stakes situations, right?
Absolutely. Whether it's a crisis at work, a complex project deadline, maybe even a family emergency, understanding the need for clarity, the power of clear expectations and recognition under pressure, that's valuable stuff.
So maybe a final thought for our listeners to chew on.
Yeah, maybe think about times you've been in a really high stakes situation. What kind of leadership did you see or maybe provide? What felt most effective? How do these ideas about transactional clarity versus transformational inspiration resonate with your own experience? And maybe, how could you adapt your own leadership approach next time things get intense, remembering that sometimes the clearest direction is the best support you can offer?
Definitely something to mull over. Great insights today.
Always fascinating to look at leadership under pressure.